everyone, and welcome to the Standard Protocol. I'm your host, Matt Sutter. Thank you for tuning in to episode number 17. We appreciate you joining us on Apple, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever it is that you found us. We've seen an uptick in subscribers on all of those platforms. We're, reaching the thousands of plays now on certain platforms. So we're getting to a much broader audience than I thought we'd be getting to this early on, but we are expanding rapidly, and that's good news. That gives us the ability to keep moving forward. We know we found a base out there. Our top listening city right now, oddly enough, is New York City, followed by several cities in the Midwest. So we're glad to reach the East Coast out there. Hopefully those of you that are joining us from NYC, you are enjoying some of the material, and you're finding that there's some helpful dialogue here to get you through your daily struggles. Now, going back to episodes 15 and 16, if you haven't been caught up on those yet, or if you haven't listened, please take a moment to go back and dive into those two, 15 especially, because that was kind of the one where we hit the realism of working in a toxic environment, and what it's like to exit that and to have to move on to bigger and better things. And many of you are in the same boat and are feeling the same things. The overwhelming number of correspondences that I've gotten, both on the Standard Protocol inbox as well as text messages, phone calls over the past few weeks. I'm still getting them on a daily basis. In fact, I had another one come in just this morning. Somebody that understands fully what many of us are going through and the struggles at hand, and how do you break that cycle of systemic toxicity, for lack of a better term, in these work environments. And when you see the promotions that are taking place in many of these organizations, it just inherently reinforces that some of our organizations are going to be operating this way for years and years to come. So how do we weather that storm? And really the reality of it is we have to weather it together, because we're all in the same boat, even though we think that sometimes we're alone. We feel alone. We feel siloed. You're not out there. You're not alone fighting this battle yourself. It's all of us. So just wanted to mention the Standard Protocol email inbox is standardprotocolpodcast@gmail.com, standardprotocolpodcast@gmail.com. And again, we thank you for all of the correspondences. Everything has been 100% positive over the last couple weeks. I haven't had anyone reach out with any negativity, and that either means we're doing it right, or the people that hate the show just aren't taking time to write in. It's one or the other. So I like to think that we're reaching people in a positive manner, and we're bringing these things to the surface that have long been needed, have long been in need of some discussion, we'll say. And whether or not we can affect change remains to be seen, but just getting the awareness out there and talking about some of the things that our young people in the professional workforce are going through. There's not too many platforms out there that are willing to take on some of the things that we are. So in that sense, I like to think that we're setting ourselves up for progress, and that we're going to be making some forward movement with all of you here in the near future. So with that, I wanted to roll into my first topic, and here we go. So topic number one for the day, because this is one thing that we've received a lot of email and a lot of correspondence over, is just the overall workplace harassment, bullying, toxic work culture environment. And I know this is the third episode in a row that we've talked about this, but it's become such a big issue because so many people are reaching out saying, yes, I've experienced that. I witnessed a coworker experience that, and I've lost all respect and all trust for my management because of it. And how do you overcome that? Because once that trust is gone, it's very difficult to get back. And when you see people treated the way that they are in many of these workplaces, whether it's private sector, public sector, et cetera, you see the detrimental effect that has, not only on the individual going through it, but just the overall workforce in general, because everybody starts running scared. They keep their head down. They're doing the bare minimum to get by. They're not thinking outside the box to come up with any solutions to problems, because they just don't want to have to deal with the management. And so if there is a problem, it's either not getting solved or it's not getting addressed because nobody feels comfortable enough to go to their bosses with those issues and to try to resolve them. But to back up, some of the resources that are available, if you are, if you are in a hostile work environment or you experience that workplace harassment and that bullying, there's a couple of things you should check out here. Number one is a nonprofit called workplacebullying.org. And if you go to that website, they have some great statistics here. They define workplace bullying as repeated health-harming mistreatment by one or more employees of an employer, abusive conduct that takes place in the form of verbal abuse or behaviors perceived as threatening, intimidating, or humiliating, work sabotage, and in some cases, a combination of the above. And so workplacebullying.org has all of this stuff outlined. They have some quick statistics here that I'll go through. 30% of adult Americans are bullied at work. That's, 30%, that's 3 in every 10 that are either currently or have been bullied. That's a tremendous percentage, in my opinion. 76.3 million workers are affected. 61.3% of bullying is same gender bullying. So these are male on male, female on female. And then 43% of remote workers are bullied. And that number kind of blew me away, because if you're working from home and yet you're still being bullied, if your employer is taking the time to bully you via, Zoom messages and things, Zoom conference calls and things like that, then you really, truly have a toxic work environment there. I mean, that's taking it to a whole new level. So those numbers for me were kind of eye-opening, but there is a good base of information there on workplacebullying.org that you should check out to kind of see what your options are and whether or not you fit into these categories. Now, the other area that I'll point you to is the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, which is at eeoc.gov/harassment. And they have harassment outlined, as it's defined in the Civil Rights Act of 64. And it, basically is harassment can be based on race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, or pregnancy. And age 40, as far as those age discrimination cases, anybody 40 and above is a protected class. So these types of things are good to know because that, if you're experiencing these things, you look at all of the parameters that have been put in place for these employers to have to follow. It's because workplace harassment and workplace bullying and hostile work environments are such a tremendous phenomenon across the state that, or across the country, rather, that it warrants all of these protections, and employees are victimized by this stuff routinely, and so that's why there's all this stuff in place to try to combat that. So please, if you're in that situation, reach out to those websites, either workplacebullying.org or the EEOC.gov website, and study up on those things. Figure out what your options are. There's always great labor attorneys out there that deal with this stuff frequently. I know there's a number just in my area here that only take these cases because they're so overwhelmed with their caseload that this is really all the time that they have to work on. There's so much of this going around, and it's not just in the private sector, it's in the public sector. It is everywhere. And you would think that in organizations that are, run by, women or minorities, that the numbers are different. They really aren't. The numbers are all over the board. There really is no one common denominator that you can point to and say, this is the cause. It just ultimately is culture that has been allowed to exist in many of our workplaces out there. And until standing up for yourself becomes the norm, these cultures are going to continue to exist. And I know firsthand, I know as well as anybody, that it is extremely difficult to go out and get an attorney and pay the retainer fees so that you can stand up for yourself and that you can throw that red flag every time they try to do something that's retaliatory or harassing towards you. But at the end of the day, you've got to do it to protect yourself and to isolate yourself from further abuse. Otherwise, you're just going to come in, you're going to endure it every day. It's going to take its toll on you mentally and physically, and it's probably at some point going to rub off in your personal life as well and affect things at home. So these are really, I can't stress enough how important it is to lay down the parameters. And if you feel like you're being harassed or like you're being bullied in the workplace, you have got to get out ahead of that, because it is going to have some catastrophic effects. And again, like I talked last week, most of us don't have the ability, once things get uncomfortable at work, to just pack up and go somewhere else. A lot of us are locked into our employers for years, whether it's by pension plans, whether it's just because of our certain skill sets. We don't necessarily have the ability to jump ship or the education to just slide into another gig and learn a whole new trade. Most of us are pretty specialized in what we do, and therefore we have to stick with employers that can accommodate what our skill sets and our backgrounds are. And so it can be very difficult to get yourself out of a bad environment should you find yourself in one. So again, by all means, look out. Look out to some of these resources, find out where you stand, and don't be afraid to fight for yourself. Don't be afraid to speak up. If you see the treatment going on towards your coworkers or towards other people, again, that affects the whole team. It's not just that one individual. It breaks trust between leadership and all of the frontline employees. And so you have got to speak up when you say these things, as uncomfortable as that may be. It really is the right thing to do, and it really is what we need to do for each other in these times. So we've talked a little bit about what resources are out there for the employees, but as an employer, if you find yourself in a leadership role and you are, concerned, or you're hearing complaints from your employees that they may not feel as comfortable at work as they should be, there's a couple things that I would recommend. Again, this is just things that I've come up with based on my online research of workplace harassment and toxic work environments. Open channels of communication in work communities about harassment and actionable steps that can be taken now to make places of employment more respectful for all. Create a forum for people to demonstrate solidarity and elevate awareness to create a sense of urgency and a call to action. And develop some effective training tools and policies and other resources for organizations to implement to establish a framework for behavioral change. And those are some of the things that I actually pulled off of Project When, which is Workplace Harassment Ends Now. Those are things that it's not that hard to do, and it's not very, if you're a small business and your bottom line is thin right now with all the economical issues that we're facing. These are things that you can do in-house. Just open up the table for discussion on these matters. Engage in dialogue with your workforce and find out what it is that is making them feel uncomfortable, or if they just don't come to work and don't feel as fulfilled every day and as comfortable as they should be. Engage in that dialogue with them and find out why. And maybe there are little things you can implement as far as change goes that aren't very cost or money intensive. There are changes that can be made that will simply, just kind of tweak the environment so that people feel a little bit more comfortable coming in every day. And sometimes just developing those relationships and having those conversations is all it takes. That can be worth a lot in and of itself. So, establish, actionable sets of criteria for your organization to adopt and administer, and just try to develop that overall harassment-free work environment. I talk about this a lot because it is what I came from recently. But again, going back to what I discussed and what I touched on last episode, I consider myself a subject matter expert in this because by and large, I've been bullied in different environments my entire life. And so, whether I'm 40 years old and, being railroaded out from my employer of 15 years, or, back when I was 9 years old, taking a good ass whooping on the playground, I feel like my life always comes back to this particular topic, and how do I make myself lesser of a target, and how do I feel comfortable wherever I go, whether it's work, whether it's home, whether it's, just any environment that I find myself in my life. How do I get myself back to a point to where I'm comfortable in my own skin? And, some of that comes through the mental health issues that we talked about in previous episodes, working through those and getting the help that you need, and speaking to a licensed therapist or counselor, medications for anxiety and depression and things that bullying tends to trigger in most of us. A lot of those things are really necessary to overcome how you're feeling every day when you go to work. So it's unfortunate that any of us are subjected to that in our workplace or in our environment, but the reality of it is that a lot of us are. And so there's no shame in reaching out and seeking those resources and seeking that help so that you can get yourself back on track and continue to move forward in life. And again, the more productive you are in your professional life, the least likely it is to, have those work problems that bleed over into your home life and affect things at home as well. And sometimes, you need to take a step back every now and then from your professional life and focus a little bit more on your family life. And once you find that balance, you may find that those problems tend to iron themselves out. You're not as consumed by the problems at work when you're focused a little bit more on what's going on at home and your families and your loved ones around you. So there can be a sense of ease when you tend to step back a little bit from work and realize that your job is not necessarily your identity. And for years, the position that I was in, I treated that as my identity. And it really was, I identified as that person in that title, in that role. And, now that I've been away from it for a while, it's kind of nice to not have to, to be able to identify as more than just a job or more than just a career. I identify as a father more now. I identify as somebody that is, here for their children more and their family, and just freeing up some time to have more conversations with loved ones that I haven't spoken to as much over recent years because I've been so busy. So you get to a point to where you just have to disengage a little bit, and you have to do what's best for yourself when you're feeling you're feeling that uneasiness at work every day. You have to find ways. I've had runs where everything was firing on all cylinders at work, but things were a little bit rocky at home. And now I feel like I'm at a point where, I feel much more at ease with my professional life. And now things at home are coming together a little bit better than they have in the past. So just that work-life balance is huge. You've got to find ways to set that baggage down at the end of the day. Our jobs are all stressful. It doesn't matter what you do. If you're hauling trash for a living, or if you're a surgeon, or if you're a law enforcement professional where you're dealing with critical incidents on a routine basis. There's so much weight that we carry just because of what we do and the obligations that we have financially and to keep our incomes coming in so that we can meet all of those obligations. There's a lot of weight that we carry around and a lot of baggage. And sometimes you just got to set that baggage down and just be a normal human being for a while. And it's amazing how much better you'll feel at the end of the day when that happens. So I'm not saying go out and quit your job. I'm just saying find a way to really hone in on that work-life balance. And if you would have asked me about this 5 years ago, I would have told you were crazy. It's possible to balance all this stuff when it's as lopsided as my career used to be. But I will tell you now, having gone through the last couple of years and seeing how things have played out, I should have really honed in on that balance much sooner than I did. So for what it's worth, if you're experiencing issues with either your mental health or your personal relationships or whatever because of your job, you got to take a step back and you've got to realize that it's okay to go hard for a while, and it's okay to be all about your career in the beginning to get it off the ground and to get it going. But at the end of the day, at some point, you've got to start to set that stuff down. And at some point, you've got to really focus in on your personal relationships and your personal life, because somebody told me years ago, don't fall in love with your company or your organization, because that company or that organization is not capable of loving you back. And there is so much truth to that. I didn't really understand it at the time, but now that I look back, it hits home probably more so than anything I've heard recently, because all of our organizations, whether they're companies, whether they're public sector jobs, they've all been in existence long before we were here, and they will be in existence long after we're gone. And so no company, no corporation is about one person. Once you step away, somebody else will step up and fill your role, and everything continues to move like clockwork. And so nothing that we do is about just us. It's about the organization as a whole. And so when one person steps down, if you're that person that's letting it ruin your life because you feel that you are so key to that organization that it can't function without you, unfortunately, I've got bad news for you. That organization will continue to function long after you're gone. So please find that work-life balance, get things squared away at home. Make sure you've got one thing in check. I will tell you, things in my life fell apart at about the same time, my professional life as well as my personal life. And that was very difficult to go through, not having either of those pillars there to lean on. Oftentimes when people, things start to fall apart at work, they lean on folks around them at home to get them through those tough times, or vice versa. If things are falling apart at home, they lean on their colleagues at work. With me, both ends of that kind of imploded at the same time. So it was very difficult to overcome. So I don't want to see any of you in that boat. But we're always here to field your questions. We're always here to discuss your concerns. standardprotocolpodcast@gmail.com, standardprotocolpodcast@gmail.com. That is the email inbox. Shoot us a message and we will be more than happy to read those on the air. Quite frankly, I've gotten so many over the last couple weeks, I can't get to every one of them on the air. However, I will touch on a few of these. We did have somebody write in who experienced one of their coworkers being bullied and harassed by their boss, and that person was able to kind of reiterate how seeing that one individual, what they went through at the hands of their supervisor or their boss, how that basically demolished all trust and respect from this individual's peers around them for the management and the leadership. And now there's a distrust there, and things are just not comfortable every day for the entire team. And that's unfortunate to see that because of how one person in a leadership role chose to treat one of the frontline employees. So it's amazing how those frontline workers, they will band together when one person gets messed with. They all take it personally, as they should, because that's how a team environment works. You mess with one of us, you mess with us all. And it's amazing how those things can be detrimental to an entire workforce when one person goes through it. So again, if you're seeing that, speak up, say something, make your voice known that it won't be tolerated. And the more quickly that those types of conversations become open and welcome in the environment, the better the chances are that we will be able to resolve some of these workplace harassment situations. So with that, again, shoot us your questions, comments, concerns, standardprotocolpodcast@gmail.com. We will read those on the air. And for now, we will move on to the next topic. Okay, and the other thing that I wanted to touch on today, we talk a lot about the negative environments, and because that's what a lot of us are dealing with, and that's a lot of the correspondence that I've gotten has addressed those negative work environments. But I'd like to key in on some of the positive work environments, and what have those of you out there that have had a long relationship with your companies or your place of employment. How have those companies taken care of you over the years? And I was just looking at some things on, corporations here in my local area. And there was a local trucking company that has a new program where their fleet management, where they're making sure that their drivers are in no more than a 2-year-old unit at any given point in time, because number one, safety equipment's better, new technology is better in newer equipment. There's less downtime for repairs and that kind of thing. So some of those companies are really doing everything they can to take care of their employees and make sure their employees are maximizing productivity. A lot of that is to keep their bottom line, higher, but a lot of it is too just for employee satisfaction. So I started thinking, what are some of those companies out there that many of you have worked for, where people are being taken care of and where people are being treated as if they're more than just a number or more than just a cog in the wheel. And I'd really like to hear more feedback on that. So for those of you out there that are with an employer that you're extremely happy with, they take care of you, they have great benefits packages, they truly care about the health and well-being of their employees, both physically and mentally, fill us in, enlighten us on what it's like to be a part of those companies, and how do you, for those of us on the outside, how do we get our foot in the door with those in those environments? So standardprotocolpodcast@gmail.com. Look forward to hearing your emails. We'll delve into some of those next week. But for now, we're up against time constraints, so we do have to sign off. That will conclude episode 17 for the week. Again, we appreciate all the love that we've gotten on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. Please keep the correspondence coming. We appreciate all of your emails, all of your correspondences, your clicks, your likes, your text messages, your phone calls. Everything is much appreciated. So keep those coming in. And with that, we will see you next week. Take care and be safe out there.